Today, we are doing a bit of a different video for you. We're actually going to review some of the hits and misses from my college football predictions. Obviously, predicting the future is pretty tough, so most of these are wrong, and some of them are embarrassingly wrong. So we're going to look at some of those and overemphasize the very few that I got right. So starting in the ACC, let's see, there's a... Well, I did say Florida State would lose to Georgia Tech, so I was right on that. They just happened to lose to everybody else, too. So just in case you missed it, they did not go 9-3, go to the college football playoff. DJU did not win Conference Player of the Year. Florida State went 2-10. In my defense, most people did not expect them to fall off that hard. Like, they were a preseason top 10 team, I believe. You know, I wasn't the only one who was fooled, but man, that is pretty drastic drop-off to go from, a preseason top 10 team to a 2-10 team a year after missing the college football playoff at 13-0. So that was obviously the biggest miss. A couple ones that was pretty accurate. A lot of people thought Pittsburgh was going to be in rebuild mode, and at first it looked like my prediction was going to be way too low. They start off 7-0, and then they started losing, and they just didn't stop losing, and so I ended up actually being high. Despite the 7-0 start, they ended up finishing 7-6 with their bowl game, so slightly off in Pittsburgh, pretty close. One team that I pretty much nailed exactly was Georgia Tech. I said they would probably not be a full threat, probably not win the ACC or anything, but that they would be an agent of chaos and cause some upsets. So I actually had the record really close, 7-5 in the regular season, and they did not beat Notre Dame, but they did beat Miami, one of the key losses that kept them out of the college football playoff, and they did beat Florida State, as I mentioned, so I was pretty accurate on Georgia Tech. Most of the rest of the ACC, not so much. NC State and Duke could have been flipped. Obviously missed on SMU winning the regular season and going to the college football playoff. I had one ACC team going to the playoff. They ended up getting two. So I was correct that there would be one non-SEC Big Ten or Notre Dame at-large team. It just did not come as the extra team from the Big 12. It came from the ACC. Speaking of the Big 12, basically all the teams that were supposed to finish at the bottom finished at the top, and all the teams were supposed to finish at the top finished at the bottom. One thing that I did get right, though, I said a team from Utah would finish 10-2, but lose tiebreakers and not get to go to the Big 12 championship. And in fact, that happened. It just was BYU and not Utah themselves. Iowa State did better than expected. I said they might be a dark horse, but, they finished in the top two. Colorado, I was a little bit higher on them. A lot of people thought they would finish with only 4 wins or 5 wins. I actually had them going 6-6 and being bowl eligible. They ended up winning 9 games, so even I shortchanged Colorado a little bit, but I was at least better than most. Kansas is weird because they played like the 9-3 team they were projected to be for about 4 games in the middle of the season, and then just the rest of the season, especially the beginning, was a lot of disappointment and didn't live up to the expectations. But other than that, the big story of the Big 12 was the teams that were supposed to be good finished at the bottom and didn't even make bowls, while the teams that were at the bottom, projected to not do much, finished at the top. So, very strange year in the Big 12. Big 10, I had said that Oregon would win the first game between Ohio State and them at home, and they did. I expected Ohio State to face them in the Big 10 championship in a rematch, but then shocking upset to Michigan kept them out. So they ended up playing in the playoff instead, and Ohio State did indeed beat them the second time as I projected, just not in the same game. Penn State I had exactly right, pretty much. They did go farther in the playoff than I had them going, but still a pretty accurate prediction for them. Ohio State wasn't that far off either. I had them going to the championship. I had them losing 2 games in the season, including 1 at Oregon. It just happened that the second loss was to Michigan and not in the championship to Georgia, so... But then again, predicting Ohio State to go to the championship wasn't that big a deal. I think they were the most popular preseason championship pick, and obviously they proved why they were when they won the championship this year. Definitely way too low on Indiana, but they kind of came out of nowhere to everybody, I think. Illinois I was a little bit low on, a little bit high on Iowa, Wisconsin, Maryland. I was wrong. I thought UCLA might outperform USC, but just too much losses in the portal with the new coach. USC I was actually pretty accurate on, though. Had them going 7-5 in the regular season that they did. So those are the Big Ten predictions. Looking at the SEC, I was way too high on Georgia, In my defense, Georgia had lost only like 2 games in the previous 3 years combined, and won 2 national championships, finished just outside the year after losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game. So expecting them to bounce back was not outlandish, but should have known that with a tough schedule playing at Ole Miss, Texas, and Alabama, you're bound to lose at least a couple of those, and they did. Just wasn't quite the same dominance that we've seen from Georgia, so I was definitely a little bit high on them. Alabama, I thought they would take a step back. They were actually a little bit worse than I expected, but I guess that makes sense, with all the new faces on the roster. And really, the Tennessee loss wasn't that unexpected, losing on the road against a tough Tennessee team. Even the Vanderbilt loss, that was, a competitive upset loss to an upstart Vanderbilt team that was better than usual. The one that really sticks out like a sore thumb besides the bowl game no-show against Michigan was the Oklahoma game, where they just got completely thrashed and demolished by an Oklahoma team that was frankly not good all year, and then got beat by Navy in a bowl, so that was definitely a bad mark for Bama. For Ole Miss, they had some good moments, but just one more upset than I guess I thought they were going to get, and that kept them out of the playoff. Looking at Texas, it's pretty close, had actually an extra loss in the regular season that they didn't get, so slightly better than I expected, and I had them only in the Elite Eight, not in the Final Four, but pretty accurate. Most of the SEC was actually fairly accurate. I was lower on LSU than a lot of people. Some of them had them in the playoff the preseason, so they're actually slightly better than I expected. They went 8-4 in the regular season. I had them going 7-5. Tennessee I was low on. Missouri I pretty much pegged exactly right in terms of record and what they would accomplish. I had Florida going to a bowl, and they actually beat even my expectations for them. A little bit low, obviously, on Vanderbilt and South Carolina and Arkansas. A little bit high on teams like Mississippi State and Oklahoma. A&M pretty much pegged exactly right, so there were some... SEC was actually a little bit easier despite the depth of the conference and all the good teams there. And then in terms of the group of 5 teams, definitely too low on Boise. I had them going 10-3. They ended up going 12-2 overall, 12-1 before the playoff game, which was fairly competitive against Penn State, but they lost that. So looking at the playoff, I actually got 6 of the 12 teams right, so not great, but not as bad as it could have been, I guess. I was low on Notre Dame, but I did have them in the playoff, and they did go. I did have them losing to Ohio State, just not in the championship. It was in the Elite Eight. But overall, considering where the teams ended up, the teams that stick out like a sore thumb were just trying to pick an ACC and a Big 12 champion. Tough endeavor. Like I said, lots of misses. Predicting the future is hard, but there were a couple hits in there. So take it easy on me, I guess. This is just a reminder that even my awesome sports previews are not always perfect. Sometimes I get a couple wrong, or a lot wrong. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed listening to all of the missteps and failures that I had trying to predict the college football season this year.